Welcome to NTV World Insight. In September this year, the country faced its worst unrest in decades, leading to Prime Minister's resignation and raising serious political and economic uncertainty. Nepal's growth has averaged just 4.3% in recent years. Youth unemployment is almost 23%, and a significant portion of GDP comes from remittances, which have prevented around 2.5 million people from falling into poverty. Public investment remains weak, with capital spending at less than 8% of the GDP last year, far below the 10 to 15% that is expected for infrastructure. A recent report by the World Bank has projected economic growth will go down to 2.1% in 2026 before rebounding to 4.7% the year later. Today we discuss how Nepal can restore stability, accelerate reforms and unlock growth with the World Bank Division Director for Nepal, Maldives and Sri Lanka, David Sislen. Welcome to NTV World Insight.
Great to see you again, Sarah.
How long has it been since you came to Nepal, personally or professionally altogether?
It's been just about 18 months so far. It's been the best 18 months of my professional career. And lots of changes in that 18 months. So very different Nepal today in many respects from a political point of view particularly than what I encountered when I moved here a year and a half ago.
So we've hosted you quite well.
It's been fantastic, absolutely.
When you are free, what do you like doing here in Nepal?
Look, I am an avid golfer, so I spend a lot of time at Gokarna hitting golf balls and cursing because it's a very difficult place to play golf. And I ride my motorcycle around a little bit, and mostly I spend a lot of time reading about Nepal, its history, its politics, and learning as much as I can about this incredible place.
Apart from golf, is there any other place that you really like to hit to?
I would say that since I'm here without my family and I'm here alone, many of the bartenders in Kathmandu know me well. So I do spend some time out with my friends, enjoying the incredible nightlife in the city.
All right, to begin with, the country partnership framework, the $2.7 billion support project for Nepal. How is it going so far?
Oh, thanks. That's a great question. Look, the World Bank has a long-term partnership with Nepal. We've been here for more than 60 years. We currently have a portfolio, a program of about $2.2 billion spread across almost 20 projects, ranging from health to education to infrastructure to youth employment. And that has really, I think, reflects the deep engagement that we have in the country. Our new program that, as we talked about the last time you and I saw each other, is a long-term commitment, a 7-year commitment to the country. Is really exciting, mostly because it focuses laser-like on what we think is the most critical issue for the country, and that is jobs. Jobs for youth, but jobs more broadly. Getting an economy that is really driving growth through the private sector and creating jobs is so central to the development challenges of Nepal, and I think we learned a lot about that in September, right? How just truly critical it is. In this coming year, I'll just say that we are really excited because we have a couple of operations that we really think will help jumpstart the jobs agenda. So working with the DCGF, the Development Credit Guarantee Facility, a major investment program in Lumbini, the birthplace of Buddha, and some really exciting work that we hope to start in the coming months around improving air quality in the Kathmandu Valley. So really exciting times, lots of work ahead.
Nepal's public debt, as mentioned in your latest report, is increasing from 43.6% in 2025 to 45.2% in 2026. May I ask how much Nepal currently owes the World Bank, and as a Nepali citizen, how much do I, as an individual, owe to the World Bank?
Let me try to put in a little bit of context, though. I think we're at a time where Nepalis are very critical of the public sector and very critical of the government, but I think one of the things that Nepal and Nepalis should be incredibly proud of is the steady, mature, and really world-class macroeconomic management that has taken place over the last decade. Nepal remains at low risk of debt distress. This means that compared to other countries, compared to comparator countries, it is actually doing very well in terms of not borrowing too much money. That increase that you said, a little bit up, is something to be conscious of and to be focused on. But the biggest challenge in Nepal is not the amount of debt, but turning that debt into productive investment, making sure that when you are borrowing from the World Bank or the ADB or the markets or Nepalis themselves, that you are really able to make investments that deliver returns. Now, Nepal, yes, the overall amount of debt that the Republic of Nepal has increased a little bit, but the profile of that debt is very concessional. It's extremely long-term, and the bulk of it, especially the bulk of the international debt, is coming from multilateral development institutions like the World Bank and the ADB. So that's extremely long-term, 30-plus year debt at very, very concessional rates. So there's good debt and there's bad debt, but the most important thing, as I mentioned, is turning that borrowing into development results. And I think that a lot of what we saw in September is frustration, especially among the youth, about not seeing those investments materialize and turn into the kind of results that drive growth and development.
How has it been for you working with the bureaucracy in the government? Is it easy?
Not a question I was expecting from you, Sarah, but thanks for asking. Look, I am amazed every day at the dedication, hard work, and commitment of the civil servants and people in the system, both the politicians and the civil servants. And I say that honestly. Now, I feel sometimes that they're fighting against a system that is overly complex, that is overly difficult to manage. So one of the, I just give an example. It is so difficult to get infrastructure built in Nepal. It just simply takes so long. And that's not because good people of goodwill in the system are not working really hard, because they are working really hard and trying really hard, but the rules are too complex, they're Byzantine. I give the example because we talk about it a lot, but in Nepal, to get a tree cutting clearance, if you want to widen a road or build a piece of critical infrastructure, requires a cabinet approval. There are few countries, I would suspect there is no country in the world where the prime minister needs to weigh in on the cutting of a few trees so that you can widen a critical piece of infrastructure. So I really think that part of the challenge for Nepal is making the kind of policy, legal, institutional, and regulatory reforms that will actually allow those people in the system to deliver the kind of development results that Nepalis are asking for.
When you talk about the tree cutting requirement, conservationists would not accept it, or they would conflict.
Look, there's been Nepal is one of the most successful countries in increasing its forest cover, right? The increase in forest cover from the 1970s to today, I forget what the number is, but has been world class. We're now at a time where actually Nepal's biggest challenge is not in increasing its forest cover, but in doing two things: converting that incredible assets of forests into productive use, and second, making the kind of infrastructure investments that will allow growth and development to really take off. You talked about the growth rate of being at 4.3% in your intro. That is simply too low. Nepal needs to get to that 7 and 8% of growth rate if it wants to reach escape velocity, to get out of this lower income and soon to be lower middle income world that it's living in.
The non-performing loan ratio increased from 3.9% to 4.6% in 2025. What immediate steps would you suggest Nepal should take to reduce the financial sector's vulnerabilities?
Right, so great question, and this is really about the domestic financial sector, the domestic banks. I think it's important to put in, so yes, we've seen a little bit of an uptick in non-performing loans, and this is troubling. But we do need to put in the context. The banking sector in Nepal is quite healthy. Capital adequacy ratios are high and acceptable, and profitability remains solid. But this increase in NPLs and non-performing loans is troubling because it starts to constrain credit growth. And we know that credit growth, lending to private enterprise for making investments and building businesses, is central to the development trajectory in the country. So a little bit troubling. Overall, not a worrying situation in the banking sector right now, but I think it underpins the broader challenge in the country, which is that we don't see investment either by the public sector or by the private sector, and here we're talking about the private sector largely, as being enough and fast enough. So making sure that, that remittance money that's coming in is really being translated into investment and not just consumption. Investment levered by banking loans and not just consumption.
These are all very interconnected. Remittances support our economy, yes.
Absolutely.
But we're trying to also raise jobs. How do we come about, changing the scenario for Nepal? Because definitely, if we continue to be dependent on remittances, it's not going to be sustainable.
Well, you've touched on what I really think, Sarah, is the central story in the Nepali economy. Okay, and it's nuanced. It has good and bad. It's not black or white. Let's be very clear. Nepal has reduced extreme poverty faster than almost any country in human history. So when I started my career in the World Bank, extreme poverty in Nepal was 55%. And today it is 0.37%. It's almost zero extreme poverty. That's at a low level. And that has happened almost exclusively because of this remittance flow. Last month, 200 billion rupee, about 1.5 billion US dollars, came in remittances, right? This is $2 million US dollars per hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a month. I mean, a remarkable story. But it hasn't translated into investments, private sector growth, and job creation that we really wanted to see. It's not a bad thing, remittances. It has been the lifeline of the country. It has been the backbone of the country's growth and development story. But as this country becomes more urbanized, as people are having less babies, as that demographic bulge starts to pivot, it will be really important to translate or translate into a situation where jobs are created in the country. We have 2,000 young Nepalis a day leaving the country to work abroad. So you asked me about my time here in Nepal. So I've been here for 18 months, and you can do the math. If 2,000 Nepalis a day are leaving the country, in the short 18 months that I've lived in Budanilkanta, almost 800,000 Nepalis have left the country to work abroad. So this is something that has been the lifeline of the country and will continue to be very important, but we really need to complement it with opportunities in Nepal. We need to give young Nepalis the choice. Do you want to go work abroad, or do you want to pursue a career with good opportunities here in the country? So I really think this is the central challenge of the economy.
When we talk about the use of remittances, the contribution and the importance that it holds, where do you think is the gap in actually using it in sectors that could materialize into something bigger?
Great. It's a great question. I don't have the answer. What is clear is that massive remittance flow that we talked about, and again, remittances are about 50 times the amount of ODA, of money that comes from the World Bank and the ADB and development partners. So it's 50 times more money every year is coming in remittances, but right now it's mostly being used for consumption. And that's been fantastic. It's paying for private schools, it's paying for private health care, it is paying for your cousin's scooter or your mother's scooter or a television or putting food on the table. But what we're not seeing it translate into is Nepalis whose son, daughter, cousin, mother is abroad taking that money and making productive investments. Because I think there's such concern about the difficulty in running a business in the country. The business environment is not what it should be. That is so challenging. So turning that remittance flow into both productive private investment and also making sure that the government can make use of those resources to make productive public investment is the investment challenge.
Growth is projected to fall to 2.1% in 2026 before recovering to 4.7% in 2027. What do you think can be done to cushion in the short run this downturn?
Right. So we are regrettably projecting a quite significant downturn in growth, largely as a result of the events of September. And the main channel of that has been through the tourism sector. Right, we're seeing a significant decrease in tourism. I think it was down 18% in September and into October, and really expecting that if we see a smooth and peaceful political transition, and if we see the continuation of a serious reform agenda to make that business environment that we just talked about more compelling, to attract foreign direct investment, to reduce red tape, to get much more clarity on issues like taxation and customs, that we would see a return to significantly higher level of growth. We're projecting 4.7 in next year, but still that remains too low, right? I mean, we really need to think about how Nepal can get to that 7, 8, 9% growth rate. There are some really exciting green shoots, really exciting things that we're seeing happening, particularly in the IT space. So in the last few weeks, we saw the first Nepali firm listed on the NASDAQ, right? This is incredibly exciting stuff. More of that faster is what Nepal really needs.
Public capital stock fell about 75% of the GDP in the mid-1990s to about 54% in 2019. Is this drop alarmingly concerning for our country?
Look, it's definitely a problem. We know globally that there are really two factors that drive economic growth. The growth in the public capital stock and what we call total factor productivity, or how you turn your factors like capital, like your people, into productive assets. And on both of these fronts, Nepal has some significant challenges, right? The big issues in the education system that we know about, that means that our human capital is not delivering, and a downturn in the investment in capital investment reflected in the budget, and also how much of the government money is actually spent, that has been a real problem. So we've seen the actual execution of the public investment. So when the government budgets 100, the amount that they actually are able to spend over the course of a year has actually come down over time. So not only is the government budgeting less for capital investment, but it's spending less of the money that it's budgeted. And so as a result, fewer roads are getting built, fewer airports are getting upgraded, fewer hospitals and schools, and all of the kind of critical infrastructure that we know makes up that capital stock is actually being delivered for the Nepali people.
Foreign direct investment inflows also remain subdued in recent years. What do you think can Nepal do to attract more investment, especially considering all the political uncertainty and also considering the Gen Z movement?
Yeah, I think the troubling issue with foreign direct investment in Nepal is that the low levels of FDI today are not a reflection of the events of September. It has been a really troubling trajectory of very, very low levels of FDI over time. And this is something, again, we talked a little bit about this. We want to see Nepalis invest in Nepal, but bringing technology and investment from abroad is actually really central to getting that total factor productivity that I talked about raised. And we see very, very low levels of it. And there's a number of reasons for it, right? One is political and policy uncertainty. If I'm a foreign investor and I'm not sure if the government is going to change in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or multiple times over the next year, I'm going to be hesitant to invest. So political stability and policy stability is really critical. Clarity on issues like taxes is really critical. Honoring the trade agreements that the country has is really critical. So giving the policy environment that people are willing to make the investments in, willing to take my money from abroad and put into Nepal, is absolutely central. The poor quality of infrastructure in the country remains a major drag on things like foreign direct investment. I give you an example. 28% of agricultural production is lost in transit inside Nepal just because of the poor quality of infrastructure, the lack of storage, et cetera. So if I'm a foreign investor thinking about making a major agribusiness investment, am I going to choose Nepal, where the roads, the bridges, the airports, the quality of infrastructure is so poor, or am I going to think about somewhere else where my money is safer because of the lack of capital stock? So really, many of the questions that you've asked really have this thread that ties through them. Right?
So this is recent. Some time back, the World Bank, through IDA, ADB and Switzerland launched a 3-year partnership to strengthen Nepal's disaster risk management and build climate-resilient infrastructure. How will this partnership move forward, and who will it benefit?
Super excited about it because our collaboration with the ADB particularly is a centerpiece of our engagement here. I think that's something that is very important. We really try to work as one team to support the government of Nepal in its development journey. And we've been really fortunate to be able to partner with the government of Switzerland, who's been providing a significant amount of grant resources around this issue of climate change, climate adaptation, being able to deal with disaster risk in a more sustainable and thoughtful way. So Nepal is one of the countries that is most exposed to disaster risk, both from earthquakes but also from things like flooding. And so being able to partner with Switzerland and the ADB in embedding thoughtful disaster risk management approaches in all of the infrastructure, both that we finance but that the government supports, is very important. We talked earlier about the CPF. Our CPF has 2 and only 2 foci. One is jobs that we talked about, and the second is reducing the risks from natural disasters. So these are really 2 pillars of our engagement here at the World Bank in Nepal.
The World Bank has approved $150 million for the 3rd Bridges Improvement and Maintenance Program. The goal, as mentioned, is to build climate-resilient bridges with real-time monitoring to make critical road networks safer and more reliable, especially in disaster-prone areas. How is the project rolling so far?
Just started, but I think the story on bridges is a great one. Again, I think too much we focus on all the problems. We really need to focus on the fact that from 2012 to 2024, the World Bank supported the maintenance and construction of over 44,000 bridges throughout the country. So this new bridge program builds on 12 years of real success on doing that. I think what's exciting about this one is that we really are bringing these issues around disaster risk management and resilience much more centrally into how we think about how the government plans, builds, and maintains its infrastructure.
David, thank you so much for being on NTV World Insight.
Thanks so much.
And thank you too for watching the show. Do join us on our social media pages. We are on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and also on YouTube. And also visit our official website, nepaltvworld.com, for more news and information. Until next time.